Tonight, we are drifting into the quiet, powerful world of ice and snow, not as something distant or lifeless, but as a living presence that shapes mountains, oceans, weather, and even time itself. Ice and snow are not just cold or white or still. They move. They remember. They carry stories from the deep past and whisper them slowly into the present, one frozen layer at a time. In this gentle exploration, we will wander across polar landscapes and drifting seas through falling silence and immense pressure, discovering how frozen water quietly connects the sky, the land, and the oceans below. This is a world where stillness hides motion, where softness can carve stone, and where patience can reshape an entire planet. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here, to one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is relax. Let your shoulders drop and your breathing slow. Allow your eyes to grow heavy and let the noise of the day fade into the background. As your mind unwinds and we drift together into this frozen, fascinating world. Let's begin. Ice is less dense than liquid water, so it floats. When water freezes, its molecules settle into a crystal arrangement that takes up more space than they did when moving freely. That quiet expansion gives ice buoyancy, allowing it to rest at the surface instead of sinking. This single physical trait reshapes winter landscapes. Lakes freeze from the top downward, sealing liquid water below rather than locking it solid. Beneath that surface layer, currents continue to circulate slowly, carrying oxygen and heat. Aquatic life endures the cold season not by escaping it, but by sheltering beneath the floating ceiling. On oceans, drifting ice becomes mobile terrain pushed by wind and tide, gathering into rafts and ridges that reshape coastlines. Even sound travels differently, across frozen surfaces carrying sharp cracks and distant echoes. Floating ice turns freezing into a pause, rather than an ending, allowing cold to arrive without erasing what lies below. Antarctica holds the largest ice sheet on Earth, covering an entire continent. This immense body of ice rises into a high interior puddle where distance loses meaning. In places, the ice is so thick that the land beneath is pressed downward, forming deep basins hidden far below sea level. Mountains vanish under white silence, their peaks known only through radar and gravity measurements. From this interior, ice slowly flows outward, feeding glaciers that stretch toward the coast like frozen rivers. Along the edges, towering walls meet the ocean, where slabs fracture and drift away as icebergs. The ice sheet shapes its own atmosphere, cooling the air above it and driving persistent winds that slide down slope toward the sea. It is not static, yet it moves on timescales that resist human intuition. Antarctica's eyes is both landscape and archive, carrying weight, memory, and motion across millions of quiet years. A single snowflake can contain hundreds of delicate ice branches. As a snowflake forms, it grows outward from a tiny starting point, building structure molecule by molecule as it drifts through the sky. Each arm responds to temperature and moisture in the air, extending, pausing, and splitting in response to conditions that change moment by moment. Because all the arms experience similar surroundings at the same time, they tend to mirror one another, creating intricate symmetry under magnification. The resulting patterns reveal layered ridges, tiny steps, and repeating forms that resemble ferns or stars. These structures are not carved or designed. They emerge naturally from the way water molecules prefer to attach themselves when frozen. The complexity is fleeting once the snowflake lands. Warmth, pressure, or even a breath can soften those smoke and fall when skies look clear. Called diamond dust, this phenomenon occurs when the air itself becomes cold enough to form ice crystals without the presence of visible clouds. Tiny crystals condense directly from water vapor suspended in the atmosphere, drifting downward. So slowly they can appear to hang in place. Because they are small and widely spaced, the sky can remain bright and blue while snow is, quietly forming in polar regions and high winter valleys. These crystals often catch sunlight and scatter it, creating sparkling columns, halos, or brief flashes as you move your head. The effect is subtle. Many people notice it only after realizing their breath is glittering in the air. Diamond dust shows that snowfall does not always arrive with storms or warning signs. Sometimes winter settles out of stillness, building ice directly from clear, motionless cold. Ice lenses can heave soil upward, slowly reshaping whole landscapes. When certain soils freeze, water is drawn toward the freezing front and gathers into thin, growing layers of ice within the ground. Those layers, called ice lenses, expand as they form, pushing the soil above them upward. Roads can buckle, fence posts can tilt, and flat ground can become uneven without any earthquake or landslide. The heave is not a single event. It can build over many freeze cycles, lifting the surface little by little, then leaving it to settle in a new shape when thaw arrives in tundra regions. This process helps create patterned ground circles, stripes, and raised hummocks that look almost designed from above. What makes it compelling is the quiet force involved. A landscape can be rearranged by the slow growth of ice hidden beneath your feet, using only water migration, freezing, and time. Glaciers can carry boulders far from their original bedrock source. A glacier does not travel empty-handed. Rock falls onto its surface from valley walls or is plucked from the ground beneath, where ice freezes onto fractured bedrock and pulls pieces loose as it moves. Once a boulder is embedded, it becomes cargo carried for years or centuries without rolling or tumbling, the way a river stone would. That journey can end abruptly when the ice melts or retreats, leaving the boulder stranded in a place it does not match. These mismatched stones can sit in fields, forests, or coastal plains composed of rock types that only exist far away. They are natural evidence tacks showing where the ice once flowed and how far it reached. The boulder may look settled and ordinary, but its presence is a record of transport by a moving sheet of ice strong enough to relocate massive stone across long distances and set it down as if placing it deliberately. Ice can fracture with booming noises called cryosystems or icequakes. When ice or frozen ground experiences rapid stress, it can crack, suddenly releasing energy as a sharp boom. Temperature shifts are a common trigger. A quick drop can cause contraction, and the material pulls against itself until it fails. Pressure changes can do the same, especially in lake ice, where expansion and contraction are constrained by shorelines. The sound can be startling, like distant thunder on a clear night, because the fracture can propagate quickly across a wide area. In some cases, the cracking can even shake the ground slightly, producing a small seismic signal. These events are not supernatural, but they can feel uncanny because they happen in stillness without wind or storm. The landscape seems quiet, then it speaks loudly for a moment. Cryosystems remind you that frozen surfaces are under constant tension, adjusting to cold in real time. Ice is often imagined as calm and inert. The boom proves it is active, storing stress and releasing it without warning. Permafrost can store ancient plant material that does not fully decay. In ground that remains frozen for years at a time, decomposition slows dramatically. Microbes that would normally break down leaves, roots, and organic debris struggle when liquid water is scarce and temperature stay low. As a result, permafrost can preserve plant material for very long periods, locking away dark layers of ancient carbon-rich soil. This preservation is not like a museum display. It is more like a paused process, where organic matter remains only partly transformed. In some Arctic regions, permafrost holds thick deposits built from repeated seasons of growth and burial stacked over thousands of years. When permafrost thaws, that stored material can become available again, changing local ground stability and altering ecosystems that relied on frozen soil as a foundation. You can see the effect in collapsing banks and newly forming ponds. Permafrost is not simply frozen dirt. It is a long-term storage system for the remains of older landscapes kept intact by cold and time. Sea ice forms from ocean water, but glaciers begin as compacted snow. Although both appear white and solid, they come from very different histories. Sea ice forms when the surface of the ocean freezes, pushing salt out of the growing ice and trapping it in narrow channels. This gives young sea ice a layered brittle structure that can break and reform repeatedly with waves and wind. Places begin on land, where snow survives summer after summer and slowly compresses under its own weight. Over time, airspaces shrink, crystals lock together, and the mass becomes dense enough to flow downhill. Sea ice drifts, rotates, and fractures across open water. Glaciers grind, stretch, and creep across rock. One is seasonal and mobile, responding quickly to weather. The other is slow and persistent, shaped by gravity and time. Their shared appearance hides two very different forms of frozen water. Some glaciers move faster than a walking human, even on flat ground. Glacial motion does not require steep slopes or dramatic drops. Under sufficient weight, ice deforms internally, allowing it to creep outward even across gentle terrain. In some regions, meltwater reaches the base of the glacier and acts as a lubricant, reducing friction between ice and bedrock. When this happens, large sections can slide forward measurably from day to day. Scientists track this motion by drilling markers into the surface and returning weeks later to find them displaced, far beyond expectation. The movement is uneven, with the center often flowing faster than the edges, creating tension that opens deep crevasses. From a distance, a glacier can look perfectly still up close. It is a shifting mass under constant strain. The land beneath is slowly rearranged, not by sudden force, but by persistent, patient motion. Fresh snow can reflect most incoming sunlight back to space. Newly fallen snow is made of countless tiny crystal faces, each one scattering light outward rather than absorbing it. When snow blankets dark ground, it dramatically changes how much solar energy the surface retains. Even under a bright sun, the air above a snowfield can remain cold because so little warmth is stored below. This effect influences local weather, often reinforcing cold conditions after a snowfall. It also alters how animals and people perceive the landscape, flattening shadows and distorting distance. Over time, snow grains round off, collect dust, and lose their reflective edge. As the surface darkens, it absorbs more heat and melting accelerates. The shift from bright to dull can happen gradually, but its impact is decisive. Snow does not only respond to temperature, it actively shapes how energy moves between earth and sky. Ice cores trap ancient air, letting a sample past atmospheres. As snow accumulates in cold regions, each layer presses down on the one beneath it. Over years, loose snow compresses into solid ice, and the tiny pockets of air between grains become sealed. These trapped bubbles preserve samples of the atmosphere from the moment they were enclosed. By drilling deep into ice sheets, scientists extract long cylinders that contain thousands of years of layered snowfall. Each depth corresponds to a different time, allowing gases to be measured and compared across ages. Changes in carbon dioxide, methane, and other components can be traced through these frozen records. Volcanic eruptions, wildfires, and even distant storms leave chemical signatures behind. Ice cores turn the atmosphere into a physical archive, one that can be held, sliced, and studied. The ice does not just store water, it stores the breath of earlier worlds. Lake Vostok has been sealed beneath Antarctic ice for millions of years. Buried under kilometers of ice, this lake remains liquid due to pressure and heat rising from deep within the earth. It has been isolated from sunlight, weather, and surface contact for longer than humans have existed. The water is capped by a thick roof of ice that blocks exchange with the surface, creating an environment defined by darkness and stability. Because of this isolation, scientists approach it with extreme caution, aware that even minor contamination could disrupt a system untouched for immense spans of time. The lake's existence reshapes how we think about where water can persist and how life might adapt to extreme isolation. It also offers insight into similar environments beyond Earth. A hidden lake beneath ice shows that cold surfaces can conceal liquid worlds below, sustained quietly by pressure and time. Super cold water can freeze instantly when disturbed. Like a hidden switch, water can remain liquid below its usual freezing point if no solid surface or crystal is present to trigger ice formation. In this unstable state, The molecules are ready to lock into place, but lack a starting point. A small disturbance, such as a vibration impact or contact with ice, can initiate freezing throughout the entire volume at once. The transformation happens, rapidly spreading branching crystals through the liquid in a visible wave. This process explains how freezing rain formed smooth layers of ice on roads and trees. It also poses serious risks in aviation, where supercooled droplets can freeze on contact with aircraft surfaces. The striking feature is how ordinary the water appears just before it changes. Calm, clear, and fluid. It holds a transformation in reserve, released only when the conditions align. Snow crystals grow by stealing water vapor directly from the air. This begins with water vapor drifting toward a tiny seed in a cold cloud, then locking into ice without ever becoming liquid. The growth is quiet and relentless because vapor keeps arriving from every direction, attaching wherever the crystal's edges offer the easiest landing. That is why the tips often race ahead, forming sharp points and branching patterns that look deliberate. The air itself is the supply line feeding the crystal one molecule at a time as it falls in very cold, very dry places. The same process can happen close to the ground when vapor settles into sparkling crystals that drift like fine glitter. What looks like something sprinkled from above is often built in mid-air, assembled from invisibility. A snow crystal is not carved out of water. It is constructed from the atmosphere, gradually turning air into structure. No two snowflakes are identical because growth conditions constantly change. A snowflake is shaped by the exact sequence of air it travels through, and that sequence never repeats. Tiny shifts in humidity alter how quickly edges grow. Small changes in temperature favor different patterns, switching the crystal from plate, like growth to branching growth, and back again. Even gentle turbulence can change which side of the flake meets vapor first, nudging the structure toward new symmetry or slight imbalance. Two flakes can begin almost the same, then drift apart by centimeters in a cloud and meet. Different microclimates producing different ridges, gaps, and forks. The result is not randomness, but a detailed record of a path through invisible layers. Under a microscope, that record looks like careful design because it follows strict physical rules. Yet the rules respond instantly to the sky's smallest variations. Each snowflake becomes a one-time solution to a moving set of conditions formed once and never again. Blue glacier ice comes from squeezed-out air and dense crystal packing. As snow is buried year after year, it compresses into a heavier form, forcing air out of the spaces between grains. Over time, the remaining ice becomes dense and clear with fewer bubbles to scatter light. When light enters that compact ice, longer wavelengths are absorbed more strongly during the journey through thick material, while more blue light survives to emerge back out. That is why deep crevasses can glow turquoise, and freshly broken glacier faces can show a blue interior that seems to belong to another world. The color is not painted on by the sky. It is produced inside the ice by the way light is filtered during passage through its depth. This makes blue ice a clue. It hints at pressure age and the long process of compaction. A glacier can look white from afar, then reveal blue where it is thick enough to be optically deep. Glaciers carve U-shaped valleys that remain long after ice retreats. A river usually cuts downward through a narrow channel, leaving a V-shaped valley because water concentrates erosion into a tight line. A glacier behaves differently because it fills the valley from wall to wall. Rock fragments frozen into its base scrape and grind across the entire floor, widening it as well as deepening it. Over long periods, the valley becomes broad, steep-sided, and flat, bottomed a shape that looks oversized for the present-day stream, but may later return when the ice leaves. The land keeps the sculpture. Side valleys can be left hanging high above the main valley floor because smaller. Tributary glaciers erode it less deeply than the main trunk. Waterfalls often spill from those hanging valleys, marking where ice once merged. The result is a landscape that remembers the presence of thick-moving ice long after the ice itself is gone. A U-shaped valley is not just scenery. It is evidence of a past force large enough to wrenched bedrock by steady abrasion. Ice can flow like a very slow liquid under its own weight, even when it looks rigid. Ice can deform because stress persists across long time. Inside, the ice crystals can change shape and shift along internal planes, allowing the mass to creep instead of snapping. This is why thick ice can sag into basins spread outward from high areas and gradually change form without shattering into blocks. The flow is uneven areas under higher pressure to form more quickly, while colder, thinner regions resist movement. Where ice meets obstacles, it can press, bend, and wrap around them, leaving stones slowly swallowed and carried within. This slow motion behavior is easy to miss because it produces no obvious drama in a single moment, but measured across weeks or years, the motion is undeniable, and it explains how ice can relocate enormous mass without needing to melt first. Ice is solid, yet it is not fixed. Given enough time and enough thickness, it behaves with the patience of a fluid. The Antarctic interior is technically a desert, despite all its snow. Deserts are defined by how little precipitation falls, not by temperature, and the heart of Antarctica receives extremely little snowfall. In many areas, the air is so cold that it holds very little water vapor, and storms often lose their moisture closer to the coast before reaching the deep interior. What does fall can be fine, sparse, and wind-blown, arriving more like a slow settling than a dramatic storm. Yet the surface remains white because almost nothing melts away, and accumulation continues over long spans of time. Wind can scour the snow, exposing hardened crusts and relocating material into ridges and shallow basins. This creates landscapes where the ground seems coated in endless snow, even though the sky rarely delivers much at all. The interior desert is built from persistence. It shows how a place can look full while being supplied only by small infrequent additions that are simply never erased. Firn is old snow in transition, not yet fully glacial ice. After snow survives multiple seasons, it begins to change under the weight of newer layers. Individual snow grains become rounded and bond together, forming a dense, grainy material that is firmer than fresh snow, but still porous. Air can still move through it, and the spaces between grains are not fully sealed into isolated bubbles. This in-between state matters because it controls how water, air, and heat move within the upper layers of an ice sheet. During warm periods, meltwater can seep into firn and refreeze, creating hidden ice layers and changing the structure from within. Over time, continued burial squeezes firn further until pores close in true glacial ice forms, trapping air in sealed pockets. Firn is the slow doorway between weather and geology. It is snow that has stopped being temporary yet is not finished becoming permanent. Standing on firn can feel like standing on time in the middle of changing its mind. Snow can insulate the ground, keeping soil warmer than winter air. A deep snow pack contains countless tiny air spaces, and trapped air slows heat loss. Once snow covers the ground, it reduces the rate at which the soil's warmth escapes into the atmosphere. That creates a hidden layer near the surface, where temperatures can remain far milder than the bitter air above. In many northern ecosystems, small mammals use this sheltered zone to tunnel and move, protected from wind and extreme cold. Plants benefit too because roots are buffered from the harshest temperature swings, and the ground is less likely to freeze as deeply. This is why the timing of snowfall can matter as much as the depth. Early lasting snow can protect the soil for an entire season, while a cold snap on bare ground can drive freezing far downward. Snow looks like the cold arriving, yet in the ground beneath, it can act like a blanket holding on to warmth that would otherwise be lost to the night sky. Avalanches can be triggered by tiny changes in a fragile snow layer. A snowpack is built in layers, and not all layers bond well. A weak layer can form when certain crystal shapes develop near the surface, then become buried under a heavier slab of wind-packed snow from above. The slope can look stable and uniform inside. It can be balanced on a hidden fault. A small additional load, a skier, a shifting cornice, even a subtle warming that softens bonds, can cause the weak layer to collapse. When it fails, the fracture can travel rapidly across the slope, releasing a wide sheet at once. This is why avalanches can start far from the point that triggered them, and why they can feel sudden and shocking even in calm weather. The sound can be a deep, dull settling, followed by movement that grows faster than instinct expects. Avalanches are not just snow sliding, they are the sudden release of stored instability created by layers that were quietly waiting for permission to separate. Sea ice can trap salty brine channels that host microscopic life. When seawater freezes, pure ice crystals form first and push salt away. Some of that salt becomes concentrated liquid brine, collecting in tiny pockets and narrow channels inside the ice. These channels can remain liquid even in severe cold, because high salinity lowers the freezing point that creates a hidden network of micro-habitats within what looks like a solid sheet. In these confined spaces, microscopic algae and bacteria can persist using the limited light that filters through the ice to produce energy. Their presence matters because they become an early food source in polar waters, supporting small grazers and then larger animals up the chain. The ice is not only a barrier between ocean and air, it can also function as living infrastructure, a temporary framework that holds liquid pathways and small ecosystems. When the ice changes with seasons, those channels expand, drain, or reconnect, and the life within must adapt to a world that opens and closes around it. Frost forms when water vapor turns directly into ice on surfaces. On a clear, still night, the ground can lose heat so efficiently that it becomes colder than the air above it. When moist air touches the chilled surface, water vapor can skip the liquid stage entirely and lock straight into ice. That is why frost can appear even when there has been no rain, no fog, and nothing visible falling from the sky. It grows outward in patterns because tiny bumps and scratches on the surface become preferred landing places for molecules. And once a crystal starts, it invites more vapor to join it. Over hours, a thin white film can become feathery and thick, creeping across glass, leaves, and metal like a slow tide. Frost is not a coating dropped onto the world. It is the atmosphere reorganizing itself into a solid using the coldest surface it can find as a doorway rhyme. Ice grows from supercooled fog, freezing onto objects instantly. Fog can be made of droplets that remain liquid, even below freezing, suspended and quietly unstable. When those supercooled droplets strike a surface that is cold enough, they freeze on contact, building ice outward one impact at a time. Wind turns this into sculpture. Branches, fences, and tenors and cliff edges gain a thick white growth on the side, facing the airflow, as if the landscape has grown a winter fur. The texture is often rough and opaque because the droplets freeze quickly and trap air, creating a brittle, chalky deposit rather than clear ice. Rime can build fast during persistent fog, changing the weight and shape of trees and narrowing openings in rocky terrain. It also marks the direction of wind with surprising precision because the ice forms where droplets collide. Most often in rime, fog stops being a veil and becomes construction material. Ice storms can coat landscapes with heavy glaze ice from freezing rain. Sometimes rain falls through a warm layer of air, then enters cold air near the ground and becomes supercooled before it lands. The drops are still liquid as they fall, but the moment they hit a surface, they spread and freeze into a smooth, glassy layer. This is glaze ice, and it can turn ordinary streets, trees, and power lines into load-bearing structures. The danger is not only slipperiness. The weight builds steadily, bending branches, snapping limbs, and pulling lines down with a force that arrives silently. Leaves, twigs, and even blades of grass can become encased, preserving delicate shapes under clear ice, like objects suspended in glass. At night, streetlights can make the whole world glow as if lit from within. Ice storms change the meaning of sound too, adding sudden cracks and distant pops as trees adjust under a growing invisible burden. Hail begins as ice and thunderstorms, not from winter clouds. Inside a thunderstorm, powerful updrafts can lift water droplets high into freezing air where they turn to ice. The growing hailstone can be carried upward again and again, cycling through regions that add new layers each time it returns to liquid, rich parts of the cloud. This is why some hailstones show rings when cut open, like a record of repeated journeys through different conditions. Eventually, the stone becomes too heavy for the updraft to hold, and it falls sometimes through warm air, sometimes into summer heat, arriving as ice from a cloud built by intense warmth. Hail can strike with such speed that it dents metal and shreds leaves in seconds. Yet it begins as something small enough to be carried like dust. A thunderstorm is not only wind and rain, it can be a temporary factory that builds falling stone from water using vertical motion as its machinery. Sastrugi are wind-carved snow ridges that can harden like rock. When wind blows across open snow for long periods, it sculpts the surface into ridges, grooves, and sharp crests. These features, called sastrugi, can rise high enough to triple Walker and can stretch in long, aligned fields that reveal the prevailing wind direction. The surfaces often become hard because wind packs grains tightly and can polish them into a crust that resists footprints. In Polar regions, sastrugi can be more than texture. They can slow travel strain equipment and hide softer snow in troughs where a step sinks unexpectedly. Their shapes change as storms shift, so a landscape can be rewritten without any new snowfall at all, only by redistribution and abrasion. Under low sunlight, sastrugi cast long shadows that make distance difficult to judge, turning flat plains into a maze of subtle relief. They show that snow is not only something that falls, it is also something the wind can carve into enduring terrain. Snow can compact into ice without melting through pressure and time. When snow accumulates year after year, the weight of new layers presses down on the older ones. The delicate crystals break, settle, and become rounded grains that pack closer together, squeezing out air over long periods. Grains begin to bond at contact points, slowly welding into a stronger mass, even when temperatures remain below freezing. This is a quiet transformation, driven by pressure and the tendency of ice to rearrange itself toward stability. Pores shrink, pathways close, and the material becomes denser until it behaves like solid ice rather than loose snow. This process can preserve seasonal layering, creating visible bands that mark storms and winters long past. It also means that thick ice can form in places where melting is rare, because the pathway from snow to ice does not require warmth, only persistence. Snow can become rock-like through the slow force of accumulation, turning weather into a long-lasting archive. Glacial meltwater can lubricate ice, suddenly speeding glacier motion during warm periods. Meltwater can find routes downward through cracks, crevasses, and vertical shafts that act like drains into the glacier. When that water reaches the base, it can reduce friction between ice and bedrock, allowing the glacier to slide more easily. The change can be abrupt because water pressure matters as much as water volume. If drainage channels are overwhelmed or temporarily blocked, pressure can rise and lift parts of the ice slightly, making sliding easier across rough ground. This is one reason glaciers can show seasonal pulses with faster movement during melt seasons. Even when the surface looks unchanged, the water beneath does not flow like a single stream. He can form networks, pools, and shifting routes that open and close over time. A glacier's speed is not only a product of gravity, it is also shaped by hidden plumbing beneath the ice, where water can act like a temporary accelerator. Icebergs are fresh water, even when they break from sea. Edged glaciers. An iceberg begins on land as snow that has been compressed into glacier ice over long time. When the glacier reaches the ocean, it can fracture and release blocks into seawater, but the ice itself remains fresh because it formed from snowfall, not from frozen ocean water. That difference matters in quiet ways. As iceberg melts, it can create a thin lens of fresh water at the surface around it, changing local mixing and forming a cold clear halo. The iceberg also carries the memory of land in its structure, sometimes holding trapped air, bubbles, and layers that reflect different seasons of snowfall. Above the waterline, only a small fraction is visible, while most of the mass extends downward into the sea. shaping how it drifts and turns. Icebergs can travel far from their origin, moving with currents like slow, silent ships. They look like pieces of winter that have escaped, but they are pieces of land ice briefly visiting the ocean. Some icebergs flip because melting changes their balance underwater. An iceberg floats in equilibrium with its center of mass and center of buoyancy held in a fragile arrangement. As it melts, that arrangement shifts. The underwater portion is sculpted by warmer water currents and wave action, often unevenly. Cavities can form below the surface, and dense sections can be undercut, while lighter ice remains above. Over time, the iceberg can become top-heavy or lopsided, and a point arrives where it can no longer hold its orientation. Then it rolls, sometimes suddenly exposing a new face that has been hidden underwater for months. The flip can release trapped air with sharp pops and can create waves strong enough to be hazardous nearby. What looks like a calm block of ice is actually a dynamic floating body constantly reshaped below the surface where most of it exists. A flip is not random. It is the visible moment when slow melting crosses a balanced threshold and gravity takes over. Greenland's ice sheet contained enough water to raise global seas drastically. Greenland is covered by a vast reservoir of frozen water that sits high above the ocean, held in place by gravity and cold. If that ice were lost entirely, the added water would raise global sea level by roughly 7 meters, enough to redraw coastlines. Worldwide, this is not a local story because the ocean connects distant shores, and sea level rise spreads its effects far beyond the place where ice melts. The scale is difficult to grasp because the ice sheet is not a single cliff or glacier front. It is a broad, thick mass that feeds many outlets, each responding to warming in different ways. Even partial loss matters because small changes in average sea level can amplify storm surges and increase coastal flooding. Greenland's ice is often imagined as remote and silent, but it is tied directly to where people live, build, and gather. Along the world's low edges, snowpack stores winter water, then releases it slowly in spring. In many mountain regions, snow is not just weather, it is a seasonal reservoir laid down in layers. Storm after storm adds to a cold storage system that holds water high above valleys, farms, and cities. When temperatures rise, the release does not happen all at once. Melt begins at the surface, then works downward, and the snowpack behaves like a slow filter feeding streams day by day. This timing shapes everything downstream. Rivers swell when melt is steady, and they surge when warmth arrives suddenly. The same snowpack can also act like a delayed alarm, because a heavy winter may not reveal itself until months later, when reservoirs refill and floodplains awaken. In dry years, the absence is just as powerful, leaving streams thinner and soils thirstier. Snowpack turns winter into a promise that is delivered later in liquid form across an entire landscape. The sound of footsteps changes because cold snow crystals fracture differently. The familiar winter squeak is a sound made by breaking structures too small to see. When snow is very cold, its crystals become rigid and brittle, so a step crushes them sharply. Instead of compressing them quietly, that fracture produces tiny vibrations that combine into a high-pitched creak. When temperatures are closer to melting, crystals soften and begin to stick, and your foot presses them into a denser mass with less crackling. That is why the same path can sound loud one night and nearly silent the next morning. Dry, powdery snow often hisses, while wind-packed snow can crunch like shattered glass. Even the surface crust matters because a thin, frozen skin can snap in plates before the softer layer below gives way. Winter sound is not just atmosphere, it is material behavior made audible. Each step is a small test of crystal strength, and the snow answers in its own language. Snow can fall at temperatures just above freezing if air is dry. Snowflakes survive the trip to the ground based on more than the thermometer. In dry air, falling flakes can cool their surroundings as they partially evaporate, which helps them resist melting. Even when the air is slightly above freezing, the flakes may arrive wetter and heavier, but they can still land as snow if the lower atmosphere does not supply enough heat and moisture to dissolve them completely. Elevation and local airflow make this even more surprising. A cold layer aloft can keep flakes intact for most of their descent, and a brief warm layer near the surface may not last long enough to finish the job. This is why a town can see snow while the forecast shows temperatures just above freezing. The boundary between rain and snow is not a clean line. It is a moving negotiation between temperature, humidity, and time spent falling through each layer. Snowfall needs nuclei, tiny particles that help ice crystals begin. In many clouds, pure water vapor is reluctant to organize itself into ice without help. It needs a starting point, a microscopic surface where molecules can gather and align. These nuclei can be mineral dust, sea salt, soot, or pollen carried into the sky from deserts, oceans, fires, and forests. Once vapor finds one of these particles, it can begin building a crystal, and that crystal can grow rapidly by pulling more vapor toward it. Without nuclei, clouds can hold large amounts of supercooled water that remains liquid below freezing waiting. With nuclei, the same cloud can turn into a snow producer, changing its own structure from within. This means snowfall is partly shaped by what the air has been carrying across continents. A distant dust plume can help create snow far from where it began. Snow is not only a product of cold, it is also a product of tiny seeds drifting unseen that give water a place to start becoming solid. Certain bacteria can seed ice formation, influencing cloud snowfall. Some microbes have surface structures that encourage water molecules to line up into an ice-like pattern. When these bacteria are lifted into the air by wind waves or distilled soil, they can travel inside clouds and act as unusually effective ice starters. In the right conditions, they help initiate freezing at temperatures where many other particles would not. This creates a strange connection between living landscapes and winter skies. A field of forest canopy or a lake surface can release biological material that later affects how a cloud behaves overhead. The idea is not that bacteria control weather, but that they can participate in the first moments when ice begins. Once ice forms, it changes the cloud's internal balance, encouraging crystals to grow and eventually fall. This is one reason scientists study what is inside cloud droplets, not only water and salt, but organic fragments as well. Snow can begin with life carried upward, turning biology into a tiny piece of atmospheric physics. Ice crystals in clouds can steal moisture from droplets, growing faster. A cloud can contain both supercooled water droplets and ice crystals at the same time, and those two phases do not share moisture equally. Water vapor tends to move from the droplets toward the ice, because vapor pressure favors the ice surface. As vapor leaves the droplets, they shrink while the ice crystals grow larger and heavier. Over time, the imbalance can transform a cloud's contents, shifting it from a misty suspension into a system dominated by falling ice. This is one of the quiet engines behind many snowstorms. It does not require dramatic winds or lightning, only the presence of ice and liquid together in cold air. The process can also explain why clouds can suddenly begin producing precipitation after seeming stable. A few crystals can tip the balance. Then multiplication follows. What falls as snow may have begun as a competition inside the cloud, where ice quietly gains mass by drawing it away from liquid neighbors. One molecule at a time. Glacial crevice is open because the surface stretches faster than ice can flow. A glacier is always moving, but it does not move as one rigid block. When the ice passes over a steeper slope or accelerates around a bend, the surface can be pulled apart faster than the ice below can deform smoothly. The result is tension, and tension in brittle surface ice produces cracks. These cracks can widen into crevasses that run deep, sometimes far beyond what their narrow openings suggest. Patterns form based on stress, so crevices can appear in sweeping. Arcs cross hatches or long parallel lines, but map the glacier's internal strain. Snow can hide them, laying a thin bridge that looks solid until weight finds the weak span. That is why crevasses are both beautiful and dangerous. They are signs that a glacier is being stretched like taffy but only the surface fractures, while the deeper ice continues to flow. A crevasse is not a random hole. It is the visible signature of motion, becoming too fast for the surface to remain unbroken. Freeze-thaw cycles can break rock apart, called frost wedging. Water finds its way into tiny cracks in rock, seep by seep, often unnoticed. When temperatures drop, that water freezes and expands, pressing outward on the crack walls. If the cycle repeats, the crack can widen a little more each time, turning hairline fractures into visible splits. Over many seasons, this process can break large blocks free, creating talus slopes beneath cliffs and gradually reshaping mountain faces. The timing matters. A single deep freeze is not always enough. The most effective wedging often happens where temperatures hover around freezing, allowing repeated freezing and thawing rather than one long look of ice. This makes certain valleys and high plateaus especially prone to slow rock breakdown even without storms or earthquakes. Frost wedging is one of the quiet ways winter sculpts stone. It does not need dramatic motion. It uses patience and the simple fact that ice takes up more space than liquid water. A cliff can look unchanged for years, then suddenly shed rock that has been prepared by countless invisible freezes. Moraines are piles of debris delivered and left behind by glaciers. As a glacier moves, it collects sediment, gravel, and rock fragments, then concentrates them into ridges and mounds that remain when the ice disappears. These deposits can form along the sides, at the front, or beneath the glacier, depending on how the ice flowed and where it melted. A moraine can look like a natural dam, curving across a valley in a long arc, sometimes holding back lakes that did not exist before the ice arrived. Walking on a moraine can feel like walking on the glacier's toolbox. A jumble of stones of many sizes, often sharp-edged and freshly broken. Each ridge marks a former boundary, a place where the glacier paused or advanced long enough to build a line of debris. Moraines turn movement into geography. Even after the ice is gone, the land keeps the outline of where a frozen river once stood and where it chose to leave its load behind. Snow algae can tint snow red or green. During warm seasons, when sunlight returns on the surface of the snow becomes slightly wet. Microscopic algae can bloom with any upper layers. Some produce pigments that appear green, while others create red tones that can spread across patches of snow like spilled color. The sight can be surprising because it makes snow look stained, yet it is a living response to light and melt water. These algae are adapted to cold, using the brief season of surface melt to grow and reproduce before conditions tighten again. The pigment is not only decoration, it can help protect the cells from intense sunlight reflecting off the bright snow. On a large scale, tinted snow can absorb more heat than pure white snow, influencing how quickly a surface softens and melts. The color can also become part of local food webs, providing nourishment for tiny grazing organisms. Snow algae reveal that snowfields are not always sterile. In the right season, they can host visible life. Ice crystals can halo the sun or moon by bending light high in the atmosphere. Thin clouds can contain countless ice crystals, often shaped like small plates or columns. When light passes through these crystals, it is refracted at specific angles, sending part of that light outward in a ring around the sun or moon. The result can be a bright circle, sometimes with faint arcs or spots where crystal orientations concentrate. The effect of halo often appears before a storm system arrives because the clouds it create are commonly associated with moisture moving in. At high altitude, the sky can look calm, yet the light is already being organized by ice you cannot see individually. Moon halos can feel especially quiet, a pale ring suspended in darkness, revealing structure in what seems like empty night. What you are seeing is geometry made visible. The halo is not a trick of your eyes. It is a precise optical signature produced by ice crystals, aligning in the air and turning light into a measurable pattern across the sky. A snow grain can metamorphose into rounded pellets called graupel. In certain clouds, a falling snow crystal passes through super cold droplets that remain liquid below freezing. As the crystal collides with these droplets, they freeze onto it, building a soft, lumpy coating. Over time, the delicate arms of the original snowflake become buried, and their shape turns into a small white pellet that resembles tiny styrofoam. Gropal feels different from snow in your hand, and it sounds different underfoot, often bouncing rather than compressing. It can accumulate quickly during unstable weather, covering the ground in a layer that looks like snow but behaves more like small beads. Gropal also matters in mountain snowpacks because its rounded grains can create a weak, slippery layer when later snow falls on top. A surface that seems gentle can become unstable because of what fell first. Grapple is a reminder that snow is not one substance. It is a set of forms created by the exact path a crystal takes through a cloud. Polar sea ice grows from the bottom, adding layers each cold season. When the ocean surface freezes, the top becomes a barrier between air and water. After that, growth continues mainly underneath, where seawater meets the cold underside of the existing ice. New ice crystals form there, thickening the sheet downward while the top surface may remain windswept and unchanged. This bottom growth depends on the temperature difference between air and ocean, and on how much heat the water can deliver upward. In calm conditions, the underside can develop textures and plate-like structures shaped by currents and the slow release of heat from the sea. Snow on top can also influence growth by insulating the surface, sometimes slowing thickening even as air temperatures drop. Overwinter sea ice can become a layered record with variations that reflect storms, currents, and freeze rates. What looks like a flat frozen plain is being built quietly from below, one season at a time, as the ocean sheds heat into the winter atmosphere. Multi-year sea ice is tougher because it survives summer melting. Sea ice that lasts through at least one summer changes character as warmer months arrived. Salt brine drains out and meltwater flushes through, leaving the remaining ice less salty and often denser. Repeated cycles of melting and refreezing can also weld cracks, thicken ridges, and create a harder surface crust. Multi-year ice becomes more resistant to breaking the newly formed first-year ice, which tends to be thinner and more fragile. This toughness matters because it affects how the ice responds to wind and waves. Older ice can act like a more stable platform, while younger ice fractures into smaller flows more readily. The difference is visible in texture too. Multi-year ice often looks rougher with hummocks, ridges, and melt features that show it has endured. It carries the memory of survival, shaped by summers that removed the weakest parts and left a more resilient core. When multi-year ice declines, the remaining ice cover can become more seasonal, more mobile, and more easily broken. Ice shelves are floating extensions of land ice, not sea ice where glaciers reach the coast. They can continue outward over the ocean while remaining connected to the ice sheet behind them. This produces an ice shelf, a thick floating platform made of snow-derived ice, not frozen seawater. The shelf moves slowly, fed from inland, and its underside is in contact with ocean water that can melt it from below. Ice shells can be hundreds of meters thick, and they can stretch vast distances, forming bright horizons where land and sea blend. They are not static structures. They flex with tides, crack along weaknesses, and periodically cave, releasing icebergs into the ocean because they float. An ice shelf does not directly raise sea level when it breaks away, much like a floating tube in a glass. Yet their role is still profound because they interact with the glaciers that feed them. An ice shelf is a bridge between land ice and ocean, carrying inland snowfall outward into the sea. When ice shelves thin, inland glaciers can accelerate toward the ocean. An ice shelf provides resistance to the glaciers, feeding it partly through friction along coastlines and contact points with seabed highs. That resistance acts like a brake, slowing the flow of inland ice. When the shelf thins or retreats, that breaking weakens and glaciers upstream can speed up, delivering more ice into the ocean. The change can propagate far inland because glaciers respond to altered forces of their fronts. This acceleration is one reason scientists monitor ice shelves closely, using satellites to track surface elevation, flow speed, and rift growth. A shelf can look stable from afar, while subtle thinning is already reducing its strength. The key idea is connection. The floating shelf on the grounded glacier are part of the same moving system, and changes at the edge can influence the interior. When the shelf loses thickness, the glacier can lose restraint, and the delivery of land ice to the sea can increase. The coast then becomes a point where ocean conditions can influence the pace of ice loss inland. The world's largest glacier by area is Antarctica's Lambert Glacier. System drains a vast portion of East Antarctica, gathering ice from an interior so cold and high it feels detached from the ocean over long distances. The flow funnels through broad valleys and hidden basins, then delivers its mass toward the coast through a single organized pathway. What makes this system compelling is how it behaves like a slow continental scale river network, except the water is solid and the current is measured in years. Tributary glaciers feed it like branches, and the landscape beneath guides it, even when the bedrock is buried from view. From above, satellite maps reveal an immense channel of motion inside what looks like an unbroken white surface. This one glacier system helps explain how an ice sheet is not uniform. It has corridors, bottlenecks, and routes shaped by gravity and terrain, moving quietly toward the sea. The fastest Antarctic glacier streams can move kilometers each year. These are not steep mountain glaciers. They are broad, low-slope lanes of rapid flow within an ice sheet that otherwise seems almost motionless. Their speed comes from a combination of internal deformation and sliding over the ground beneath, often aided by water and soft sediment at the base. That hidden foundation can behave like a slick track, letting the ice above travel far faster than intuition expects. Scientists measure these movements with satellite tracking, watching features on the surface drift across maps, like slow drifting clouds. The speed is not constant. It can change with seasons and with shifts in how water moves under the ice. Along the margins, shear zones form where fast ice rubs against slower ice, creating long fractures and chaotic patterns. These glacier streams matter because they act like express routes, delivering inland ice to the coast efficiently. They turn an ice sheet into a system with fast lanes and slow lanes, each shaping the future coastline. Glaciers can surge, spending years slow, then racing suddenly forward. A surging glacier can appear calm for a long time, creeping along at a modest pace, then change behavior dramatically during the quiet phase. The upper glacier may thicken as ice accumulates faster than it can move away. Stress builds and conditions at the base can evolve, sometimes involving water pressure or changes in how the ice grips the ground. When the switch happens, the glacier accelerates, some pushes forward, transporting ice and debris far more quickly than before. The surface becomes strained with new crevasses and broken blocks, forming as flow speeds up downstream. The advancing ice can bulldoze sediment and distort river channels, rearranging the valley floor on the human timescale. What makes surges so fascinating is their rhythm. They can repeat with long resting periods, followed by active bursts. A glacier is not always steady. In some places, it behaves like a system that stores motion, then releases it in a concentrated episode. Snow can center grains, bonding together even without melting. Fresh snow begins as a loose pile of crystals, but time alone can change its structure. In cold conditions, water molecules can migrate across the surfaces of snow grains, moving from sharper points toward contact areas where greens touch. Those contact points grow into tiny bridges, strengthening the snowpack without needing a melt event. Gradually, the snow becomes more cohesive, resisting compression and forming a firmer layer that can support weight more reliably. This bonding can be felt underfoot when powder turns into a crust that holds its shape even though temperatures stayed below freezing. Centering also affects how snow responds to wind and how it transmits stress through a slope. A snowpack is not frozen in place once it lands. It continues to change internally, driven by subtle molecular movement. That quiet bonding is one reason old snow can feel strangely solid compared to new snowfall. The surface may look unchanged, yet the grains have been building connections. And the dark ice crystals can align under stress, changing how glaciers deform inside a moving glacier. The ice is not a random jumble of crystals forever under sustained pressure, and sheer crystals can rotate and reorient, developing a fabric where certain directions become more common. This matters because ice does not deform equally in all directions. Once a preferred alignment develops, the glacier can begin to flow more easily along certain planes, changing how strain is distributed through the ice. Over time, this can influence where the glacier bends, where it stretches, and how it responds to obstacles beneath it. The effect is invisible from the surface, yet it shapes the glacier's personality from within. Researchers study these internal fabrics using samples and instruments that reveal crystal orientation, like reading grain in wood, but on a frozen scale. It is a reminder that ice is a material with memory. Stress does not only move its stress, can reorganize its internal structure. And that internal reorganization feeds back into how future motion unfolds. Basal ice can contain rock flour that makes meltwater look milky. At the base of a glacier, ice can pick up fine sediment created by grinding rock against rock under immense pressure. This powder is called rock flour, and it is so small that it stays suspended in water, scattering light and giving meltwater a cloudy, pale appearance. Streams fed by glaciers can look like they carry diluted paint, even when the water is cold and clean. In the everyday sense, sediment tells a story of abrasion happening out of sight, where the glacier is acting like a slow, heavy sanding machine. When this milky water reaches lakes, the fine particles can settle into layers that record seasonal changes, creating natural archives on lake bottoms. In coastal areas, the sediment can spread into fjords, changing water clarity and influencing how light reaches marine life. The milky color is not decoration. It is evidence that ice can reshape bedrock into dust and deliver that dust downstream. As a visible signature of hidden grinding glacier-carved fjords can reach deeper than nearby ocean seafloors. A fjord can look like a calm inlet from the surface, but beneath it can be astonishingly deep, sometimes dropping far below the depth of the adjacent open ocean. This happens because a glacier can erode bedrock efficiently, where it is thick and heavy, digging a trough that keeps deepening as ice repeatedly passes through. When the glacier retreats and the sea floods the valley, the carved basin remains, often with steep walls that plunge into dark water. Some fjords also have a shallower sill near their mouth, built from sediment or shaped by uneven erosion, which can partially isolate the deeper basin from ocean circulation. It creates layered water conditions where cold, dense water can linger below. Fjords feel quiet because their surfaces can be still, reflecting mountains like mirrors. Yet their depths are the result of immense force applied over long time. A fjord is a flooded scar, a place where ice once reached below sea level and kept digging, leaving a marine canyon where a valley used to be. Ice sheets can create their own weather patterns over vast regions. A large ice sheet is not just a passive surface under the sky. Its cold, bright expanse cools the air above it, stabilizing the lower atmosphere and shaping cloud formation and storm behavior. Because the surface can be high and broad, it can also redirect airflow, steering winds around its edges and influencing where moisture is lifted or suppressed. The ice sheet becomes a source region for very cold air masses, which can spread outward and affect nearby oceans, influencing sea ice formation and regional climate. Over time, this feedback can reinforce the ice sheet's own persistence because colder air helps protect the surface from melting. Weather over ice can also be deceptively uniform, with subtle gradients that matter more than dramatic fronts. Instruments and satellites reveal patterns that the human eye misses, like persistent wind corridors and recurring cloud bands. An ice sheet acts like a climate engine. It shapes the atmosphere above it by changing temperature, height, and reflectivity across an area large enough to guide weather systems. Katabatic winds pour off ice sheets driven by dense cold air. When air cools over a high frozen interior, it becomes heavier and begins to flow downhill under gravity on the ice sheet. That downhill pathway can stretch for hundreds of kilometers, allowing the flow to accelerate and organize into powerful wind streams. These winds can be steady, persistent, and strong enough to scour snow, exposing hardened surfaces and transporting loose grains far across the ice. They can also shape coastal conditions, pushing sea ice away from shore in some areas and opening water leads that rapidly refreeze. What makes katabatic winds feel different is their predictability. They are not only the product of storms, they are generated by the ice sheet itself, created when cold air mass builds and then drains down slope like an invisible river in the dark of polar winter. These winds can dominate for long periods, carrying fine snow that reduces visibility and creates a world of moving whiteness. They are gravity and atmospheric form made possible by cold surfaces and vast elevation. Snow cover can hide crevasses, making glacier travel deceptively dangerous. A crevice can be wide and deep, yet vanish completely under a thin blanket of wind-blown snow. That covering can form a bridge that looks smooth and uninterrupted, especially after fresh snowfall fills surface texture. The danger is that the bridge strength depends on thickness, temperature, and the structure of the snow, layers all of which can change quickly. A span that holds in the morning may weaken later, or a bridge that looks uniform may contain a fragile section where stress concentrates. This is why glacier routes often thread through areas where slow bridges are more reliable, and why roped travel is used to manage the risk of a hidden opening. The unsettling part is that the surface can offer no warning. A glacier can appear like a gentle slope, bright and calm, while deep fractures sit beneath your feet. Snow cover turns a visible hazard into an invisible one. It adds a layer of quiet disguise to a landscape already defined by depth and tension. Glacial lakes can burst suddenly, causing powerful outburst floods downstream. These lakes form where ice blocks water or where meltwater pools against the glacier's edge. The surface can look calm for weeks, even as pressure builds beneath. The water may be held back by an ice dam, a loose wall of sediment, or a narrow tunnel that is slowly enlarging out of sight. When the barrier fails, the release can be abrupt, turning a quiet basin into a moving surge that races through valleys. The floodwater often carries rock ice chunks and MD, reshaping riverbeds in hours and stripping vegetation from banks. In mountain regions, the first sign can be a sudden roar from upstream, followed by a river rising far beyond its usual range. What makes these events unsettling is their speed. The landscape can shift between stable and unstoppable with little warning. A glacial lake is not only stored water, it is stored force held in place until the structure containing it can no longer hold. Ice dams can form temporary lakes without any concrete or rock. When a glacier advances across a valley or presses against a side slope, it can block drainage like a giant frozen plug. Water from rainmelt or upstream rivers begins to collect, behind it building a lake that exists only because the ice is in the right place. The dam is not permanent, and that is the tension. Ice can crack thin or develop tunnels, and the water behind the dam is constantly testing for a route of escape. Some ice-dammed lakes grow seasonally, rising during melt periods and shrinking when drainage channels reopen in certain regions. These lakes can appear and vanish on regular cycles, creating a strange rhythm in the landscape. Shorelines may show multiple bands where water once stood, then dropped away. The lake can feel ancient from a distance, yet it may have existed only for a short time. Ice dams show how glaciers can act like living infrastructure, building and removing waterways as they move. Ice can sublimate, turning straight to vapor in dry, cold air. In very dry conditions, ice can vanish without ever becoming liquid. Molecules leave the solid surface, directly carried away by moving air, and the ice slowly shrinks as if it is fading. This can happen on high mountains in polar deserts and in winter climates where cold air holds little moisture. A snowbank can lose mass even when temperatures remain well below freezing, simply because the air is thirsty. Over time, edges become sharper surfaces. Roughened and delicate features can be erased without a single drip of meltwater. Sublimation also affects how long ice lasts in shaded places. Because wind and dryness can matter as much as sunlight, it is a quiet form of change that is easy to miss because nothing appears to flow, yet the loss is real and measurable. Sublimation turns cold into a slow eraser, lifting water away molecule by molecule, leaving shapes altered without any obvious melting. Snow can sublimate to shrinking even when temperatures stay below freezing. A snowfield can look unchanged for days, then reveal subtle lowering, thinner edges, and a firmer crust in dry air. Water molecules on the surface of snow can escape directly into the atmosphere, especially when wind continually replaces the air just above the surface. This is why snow can disappear during cold, clear stretches, even when the sun feels weak and the thermometer never climbs to melting. The process can sculpt snow into sharp ridges and hollowed forms because exposed areas lose mass faster than sheltered pockets. Over time, the snowpack can become denser as lighter grains vanish and remaining grains bond, changing how it supports weight and how it responds to later storms. In some environments, sublimation is a major pathway of snow loss, affecting water availability long before spring arrives. Snow is often imagined as stable once it lands. Sublimation shows it is still exchanging with the sky, quietly retreating without leaving puddles behind. Black carbon on snow reduces reflectivity and speeds melting. When tiny salt particles settle onto snow, they darken the surface and change how it handles sunlight. Instead of scattering light away, the snow begins absorbing more energy, warming faster during bright hours. The effect can be subtle in appearance, a faint gray tint, but the consequence can be outsized because it pushes the surface toward earlier melt. Once melting begins, the dark particles can concentrate at the surface as water drains away, making the top layer even darker and encouraging more warming. This creates a feedback where a small amount of pollution can alter timing, especially in mountain regions where snowpack acts as a delayed water source. Black carbon can come from wildfires, diesel exhaust, and industrial processes, and winds can carry it far from its origin. The snow becomes a record of what the atmosphere has been carrying. This is not only an issue of temperature, it is an issue of color and energy. A thin dusting of darkness can change how quickly a bright landscape gives up. Its cold ice can trap methane bubbles in lakes, forming frozen bubble patterns. In some cold lakes, methane produced in sediments rises toward the surface as bubbles. When the lake freezes, those bubbles can become trapped in layers as ice thickens, creating stacked constellations suspended beneath your feet. Clear ice can reveal them as white disks, strings, or clustered pockets that look like captured motion. The pattern can show the story of freezing, with older bubbles locked deeper and newer bubbles caught closer to the surface as winter progresses. In certain places, people can see hundreds of bubbles in a single view, as if the lake is holding its breath. The gas itself is invisible, yet the ice makes it visible by preserving its shape. This is one of the quiet ways frozen water becomes a display case for processes happening below. The lake bed continues producing gas, the bubbles continue rising, and the ice continues sealing moments in place. The result is a metro archive of bubbles, written in layers and held steady until spring breaks. The Seal Lake by Carl develops ice strong enough to support vehicles in winter. On the world's deepest lake, winter can build a thick cover of freshwater ice, but becomes a temporary road across open water. As strength comes from thickness and from the ways solid ice distributes weight, especially when temperatures remain cold and stable long enough for steady growth. But the surface is not uniform. Pressure ridges can form where sheets push together, cracks can open and refreeze, and areas of thinner ice can linger near currents or springs. In clear conditions, the ice can look like glass, revealing deep blue beneath, and long fractures that run like lightning across a frozen floor. People who cross it often describe a strange sense of scale because you are driving over a depth that feels more like ocean than lake. The sound can be startling too, with low booms and sharp pings as the ice adjusts to stress and temperature changes. The winter road exists only because the lake becomes a structural material for a season, turning water into a load-bearing surface. Sea ice can form pressure ridges taller than a small house. When wind and currents push sea ice flows together, the ice cannot compress gently. It breaks, tilts, and stacks, building ridges where slabs are shoved upward and forced downward. What you see above the surface is only part of the structure. Much of the piled ice can extend below the waterline, forming an underwater keel that makes the ridge far larger than it appears. These ridges can create rough terrain that slows travel and changes how the ice cover responds to waves and storms. They also trap snow, creating drifts that insulate the ice beneath and alter growth patterns during winter. From above, pressure ridge can look like a frozen mountain chain cutting across a flat plain. Up close, it is a chaotic pile of blocks, frozen into place, shaped by collisions that happened at low speed. But enormous mass pressure ridges show that sea ice is not a smooth lid. It is a shifting mosaic that can buckle into dramatic relief when forces converge. Brine rejection during sea ice growth can help drive ocean circulation as seawater freezes. The forming ice excludes much of the salt, leaving behind a concentrated brine. That brine is denser in the surrounding seawater, so tends to sink, creating downward motion in the water column. In regions where sea ice forms extensively, this sinking can contribute to the creation of cold, salty water masses that spread through the ocean and influence large-scale circulation patterns. The process is quiet, but it is powerful because it links freezing at the surface to motion in the deep. Sea ice is often viewed as a cap that blocks exchange, yet during its formation, it can actively push the ocean into motion. The sinking brine can also affect local ecosystems by changing stratification and nutrient mixing. What begins as crystals growing at the surface becomes a driver of density differences below. This is one of the ways polar winters reach far beyond the poles. The ocean is stirred not only by wind and tides, but by the act of freezing itself. The first sea ice of winter is often thin, salty, and fragile. Early season sea ice forms quickly as the ocean surface loses heat, but it has not yet had time to thicken or drain its salt. The young ice can be riddled with brine pockets and narrow channels, making it more flexible and easier to break than older ice. Winds can fracture it into plates, then push those plates together into rafts, ridges, and jumbled fields that refreeze overnight. This constant breaking and reforming is part of how the winter cover builds, but it also means the earliest ice is unreliable to rain. It can carry a dusting of snow and look solid from a distance, while remaining dangerously thin in places. As winter continues, repeated freezing and internal drainage can make the ice stronger and less saline. But the first stage is a period of transition. The ocean is learning how to become land, and it does so through trial and fracture. Early sea ice is not stable. It is the beginning of structure, built one cold night at a time. Ice can be clear when it freezes slowly and releases trapped air. Clear ice forms when freezing happens steadily, enough for dissolved gases to escape. Instead of being sealed in place as white bubbles in a calm pond, the freezing front can advance downward like a slow closing door, pushing air and impurities ahead of it. If the water stays relatively still, that front remains smooth, and the ice can become transparent enough to reveal stones, leaves, and long fractures suspended beneath. Clarity also depends on how the surface behaves. Snow on top can insulate the ice and change how it grows, sometimes encouraging cloudy layers. Wind can roughen the surface, trapping air and creating a wider look. When conditions line up, though, a lake can turn into a window. Cracks can run for long distances, and trapped bubbles may appear as delicate chains, like a frozen record of movement. Clear ice is not a special material. It is ordinary water freezing under patient, orderly conditions. Snow density varies wildly, changing how much water it actually holds. 2. Snowfalls can look equally deep and contain completely different amounts of water. Light, fluffy snow can pile high while holding surprisingly little liquid because it is mostly air between delicate grains. A heavy, wet snowfall can be shallow, yet contain far more water, loading branches, roofs, and power lines with weight that arrives quietly. Over time, density changes again. Wind compacts snow into firmer slabs. Warm days can collapse airspaces and increase weight, even without new snowfall. This matters for water supply, because the same depth can produce very different spring runoff. It matters for travel too, because dense snow supports footsteps and skis differently than powder. Even safety changes with density, since heavy snow can overload structures and create unstable layers on slopes. Snow is often treated like a simple depth measurement. In reality, it is a variable material, and its true impact is hidden in how much water is packed into each centimeter. Wind can move snow like sand building drifts without new snowfall. Once snow is on the ground, a strong wind can turn it into a traveling surface. Individual grains begin to roll and hop in short bursts that lift into a low-blowing cloud that skims just above the ground. The landscape can be reshaped in hours, even under clear skies, as snow is eroded from exposed areas and deposited in sheltered ones. A roadside ditch fills a doorway, disappears a fence line, becomes a trap that gathers a deep bank on one side. This is why a place can look buried after a windy night, even if no flakes fall. The texture changes too. Wind-packed snow can become hard and smooth, while drifts can remain soft and deep, hiding uneven ground beneath bowing. Snow also reduces visibility, creating whiteout conditions where the horizon dissolves. Wind does not omit chill the air. It redistributes winter itself, relocating snow with the precision of terrain and the persistence of motion. Snow can fall from industrial plumes called anthropogenic snow in very cold weather. Warm, moist exhaust rising from factories or power plants can add enough water vapor to the local air to help snow form. The plume cools as it mixes with the surrounding atmosphere, and under the right conditions, ice crystals can develop and fall downwind as localized snow. This can create narrow bands of snowfall that appear tied to a specific source, sometimes dusting one neighborhood while nearby areas stay dry. The snow itself is still made of frozen water, but the trigger is a human-made stream of heat and moisture interacting with cold air. People sometimes notice it as unexpected flurries beneath a clear sky or as a sudden whitening near industrial zones. It is not a replacement for natural weather systems. It is a small local effect that shows how sensitive clouds and precipitation can be to added vapor and particles. Anthropogenic snow is a reminder that the atmosphere responds immediately to what is released into it. Even on a winter night, glaciers grind mountains into fine dust that can fertilize oceans. Where a glacier slides over bedrock, it can crush and scrape rock into extremely fine particles. When meltwater carries that mineral-rich dust away, rivers can deliver it to coastal waters. In the ocean, those minerals can become nutrients for microscopic plants, especially in regions where certain elements are scarce. These tiny organisms form the base of marine food webs, supporting everything from small grazes to fish and larger animals. The connection is easy to miss because it begins under ice and ends far offshore. A mountain valley's slow erosion can influence coastal productivity, linking cold landscapes to living seas. The dust also affects water appearance, sometimes giving river plumes a pale tint as they spread into the ocean. Over long time, glacial grinding reshapes mountains and supplies sediments that build deltas and seabed layers. The glacier is not only carving land, it is producing a fine mobile material that can travel, settle, and support life in places the ice never reaches. Cryoconite holes form when dark dust melts pits into glacier surfaces. On a bright glacier, even a small patch of dark material absorbs more sunlight than the surrounding ice. Dust, soot, and tiny rock fragments can warm the surface beneath them, melting a shallow depression that deepens over time. As the pit grows, it can shelter the dark material from wind, letting more debris collect and intensify the effect. The result is a cryoconite hole, a small water-filled pocket set into solid ice. These holes can become miniature worlds. The water can persist during the day, and the sediment at the bottom can host microbes adapted to cold light and limited nutrients. From a distance, a glacier may look clean and uniform, yet up close it can be dotted with these dark punctures, each one shaped by sunlight and particles. Cryoconite holes also influence melting patterns by concentrating heat in specific places, subtly changing how the surface evolves. They show how color and debris can sculpt ice, creating pockets of water and life where you would expect only frozen stillness. Snow crystals grow in distinct shapes depending on temperature and humidity. The form of a snow crystal is guided by how quickly water vapor can attach to different parts of its growing surface. In some conditions, growth favors broad, flat shapes. In others, it favors branching and delicate structure with arms that extend rapidly into the surrounding air. Temperature sets the pace and preference, while humidity controls how much building material is available. As a crystal falls, it may pass through multiple layers, and its shape can shift accordingly, leaving sections that look like different styles joined together. This is why some snowfalls contain mostly plates, while others produce star-like forms, needles or columns. The variety is not random decoration. It is a physical response to the atmosphere's vertical structure. A storm can generate an entire gallery of shapes, each one reflecting a particular pathway through cold, moist air. Snowflakes are often described as beautiful, but the deeper fascination is that beauty has rules. Every ridge and branch is the atmosphere expressing itself through ice. A snowflake's arms grow similarly because each arm samples similar air as a crystal develops. Its arms extend outward from the same center, exposed to nearly the same temperature and moisture at the same moment. That shared environment encourages similar growth rates on each arm, reinforcing the symmetry that makes snowflakes so recognizable. Small differences still appear because a flake can wobble or spin, and tiny shifts in airflow can favor one side briefly. Yet the overall pattern holds because the arms remain close enough to experience the same conditions as the flake moves through the cloud. This creates a strange combination of order and individuality. The arms match each other in broad outline, while the fine details vary with each slight change in surrounding vapor. Under magnification, you can see repeated motifs within a single flake, like echoes of the same rule applied again and again. The symmetry is not imposed from outside. It arises because the flake carries its arms together through the same invisible journey, letting the sky shape them as a group rather than as separate travelers. Ice can exist in many crystal forms beyond ordinary hexagonal ice. The ice in your freezer is usually one familiar arrangement, but under different pressures and temperatures, automolecules can lock into other structures. Some are denser, some form at extreme pressures, and some behave in ways that feel counterintuitive compared to everyday ice. These forms matter because they expand the idea of where ice can exist and what it can do. Inside large icy moons, pressures can become intense enough for unusual ice structures to appear potentially, forming layers that separate an outer shell from a deeper ocean. In laboratories, scientists create these ice phases to understand how water behaves when pushed beyond ordinary conditions. This is not just a catalog of rare curiosities. It is a reminder that water is versatile and that freezing is not a single outcome. The same molecule can build different solids depending on the forces acting on it. When you see ice as a family of structures rather than one material, frozen worlds become more complex. Ice is not always the same crystal. It is a set of possible architectures waiting for the right environment. Under high pressure, ice can become denser than liquid water. The familiar ice that floats is not the only outcome for frozen water. When pressure becomes extreme, the molecular arrangement can shift into forms that pack more tightly. In those conditions, ice can have a higher density than liquid water, reversing the everyday behavior we take for granted. This matters far from the kitchen. Deep inside icy worlds where gravity and overlying layers create intense pressure, dense ice forms may sit beneath liquid water, creating a layered interior with solid and liquid stacked in unexpected ways. It also changes how heat and materials move, because dense ice can act as a barrier or a structural layer rather than a floating lid. The idea is unsettling because it shows how context controls what ice is. Water does not have one set personality. Under enough force, it reorganizes into something that would behave differently in a lake on Earth. High-pressure ice reminds us that the rules we learn at the surface are not universal. They are local, shaped by the conditions around them. The Arctic Ocean can be ice-covered while the Antarctic is summer bright. These two poles behave like different worlds because one is an ocean surrounded by continents and the other is a continent surrounded by ocean. In the North Sea, ice can spread across a basin that is partly enclosed, and it can linger in sheltered regions where winds and currents keep it from dispersing. In the South, sun night returns to a ring of open water that encircles the land and the sea. Ocean can absorb heat and erode the ice edge quickly. Geography shapes the rhythm. The Arctic can hold ice across broad areas, while the Antarctic coastline can be exposed to open ocean energy and long swells. This contrast means the same calendar month can show opposite impressions, with northern seas still locked and the southern margin already gleaming with melt and breakup. It is not a contradiction. It is the planet showing how location and layout control the fate of frozen water. Antarctic sea ice expands and retreats seasonally around an entire continent. Each year, a bright ring grows outward from Antarctica as the surrounding ocean loses heat. The edge advances across a vast circle, forming a seasonal cap that can reach far into the Southern Ocean. Then, as sunlight strengthens and winds and waves return with more energy, the ring pulls back, sometimes rapidly, revealing open water again. The motion is not uniform. Current, storms, and coastline shape create regions where the edge holds longer and others where it breaks up early. Along the way, the ice can fracture into flows that drift, collide, and refreeze, so the boundary is constantly being rebuilt from space. This looks like a breathing system, expanding and contracting around the continent with a scale that is hard to imagine from the ground. The sea ice also influences what the ocean can do, because it changes how easily heat, moisture, and gases move between water and air. The seasonal ring is both habitat and barrier, appearing and vanishing with the light. Glaciers helped sculpt the Great Lakes during the last ice age. Before the Great Lakes existed in their current form, large areas of the region were reshaped by thick continental ice. As the ice advanced and retreated, it scraped and plucked at the landscape, deepening basins and smoothing ridges. When the climate warmed and the ice margin pulled back meltwater and redirected rivers began to fill the newly formed depressions. The resulting lakes were not created by a single dramatic cut. They were assembled through repeated pressure erosion and rearrangement, then finished by water occupying the space that ice had prepared. This history explains why the lakes are so large and why their shorelines and depths vary in ways that do not match an ordinary river valley. It also explains the scattered sediments and landforms across the surrounding states and provinces, left behind as the ice front paused and shifted. The Great Lakes are a visible reminder that frozen movement can re-engineer a continent and leave water to hold the final shape. Erratic boulders far from home reveal the direction ancient ice flowed. An erratic is a boulder that does not belong to the bedrock beneath it. Its mineral makeup can match a distant source region, sometimes hundreds of kilometers away, while the surrounding ground tells a different geological story. These stones were transported by moving ice that carried them across plains, and valleys then released them when melting ended the journey. What makes erratics powerful is that they work like arrows. When many are mapped, they trace pathways showing where ice once traveled and how it fanned out across the land. Some sit perched on hillsides like misplaced monuments, too large for any flood to explain, too heavy for any ordinary transport. People have built local legends around them, but their true origin is even more compelling. They are physical evidence that an ice sheet once behaved like a slow conveyor, relocating huge pieces of rock and setting them down with no ceremony. Erratics let you read vanished glaciers in the present landscape, using stone as a map of past motion. Snow can muffle sound because porous crystals absorb vibrations. A fresh snow layer is full of tiny air pockets, and that structure changes how sound waves travel. Instead of bouncing cleanly off a hard surface, vibrations enter the snow and lose energy as they pass through a maze of grains and trapped air. The result is a quieter landscape where footsteps sound softer, distant traffic fades, and the world feels unusually still. This effect is strongest with new, fluffy snow because the pore spaces are large and the surface is irregular. As snow compacts crusts or melts and refreezes, it becomes less effective at absorbing sound, and the quiet can lift. Snow muffling also changes how you perceive distance. Sounds can seem farther away than they are, and familiar places can feel altered simply because echoes do not return in the usual way. The hush is not only psychological, it is physical, created by millions of tiny surfaces stealing vibration from the air. Snow turns the ground into a sound sponge, and the atmosphere above, it becomes calmer as a result. Ice caves can persist through summer when airflow traps cold inside. An ice cave can survive warm months because the cave behaves like a natural refrigerator. Cold air is dense, and in certain cave shapes, it sinks and becomes trapped while warmer outside air has difficulty replacing it. In spring, meltwater can seep into the cave and freeze again in the lingering cold, renewing the ice even as temperatures rise outside. Some caves have openings positioned so that winter air enters efficiently, cooling the interior deeply. Then the same geometry limits summer warming. Inside, the temperature can remain stable, and the ice can take on layered forms. Icicle forests, frozen curtains, and smooth floors that reflect faint light. The cave becomes a storage space for winter, held in darkness and stone. What makes this fascinating is the mismatch between worlds. Outside can be green and warm, while inside the cave remains a cold. Archive ice caves show that climate can be local, shaped by airflow, shade, and geometry, allowing frozen features to outlast the season that created them. Frozen waterfalls can keep flowing behind the ice shell. When a waterfall freezes, it often does not turn solid all at once. Spray and splashes can freeze on surrounding rock, building a thick outer casing, while water continues to move through channels behind that shell. The result can look like a motionless pillar, yet it contains a hidden river, still dropping, still carving, still reshaping the interior. Over time, new layers add to the outside as the flowing water maintains pockets of warmth and movement within. In some cases, you can hear the water, but not see it, a steady rush coming from behind a wall of ice. The structure can also change unexpectedly if temperatures shift or water pressure alters the internal pathways. Sections can collapse or open new vents, and the waterfall's shape can rearrange itself overnight. A frozen waterfall is not simply water stopped, it is water wearing armor with motion continuing inside, protected and guided by the ice it created. Some glaciers hide rivers underneath, flowing in complete darkness. Beneath a glacier, meltwater can gather and move through tunnels and channels carved into ice or cut into the ground below. These rivers are hidden from sunlight and weather, yet they can be large enough to carry substantial flow, especially during melt seasons. The pathways are not permanent like rock caves. They can shift as ice deforms, as channels enlarge, or as sections collapse and reform. Water pressure can rise and fall, and the plumbing can reroute itself without any surface sign. Where these rivers emerge, they can pour out of an ice face as a concentrated stream, often loaded with sediment and carrying the chill of its origin. These outlets can migrate, appearing in one place one season and another place later, reflecting changes inside the glacier. Subglacial rivers matter because they influence how glaciers move and how meltwater reaches downstream ecosystems. They are also compelling because they are hidden landscapes, complete drainage systems, operating under kilometers of ice, doing their work in silence and darkness. Ice forms live on coastal glaciers and tolerate near freezing temperatures. These small forms inhabit the wet, cold surfaces of certain coastal glaciers, where meltwater and eddy provide a thin living zone. They are active at temperatures that would slow or stop many other animals moving through the upper ice, and feeding in a world that is cold, bright, and short-lived each day. The habitat is narrow, too warm, and the surface becomes unstable and runs with water too cold, and the environment becomes locked and dry in some places. The biomes appear most active during dim light, keeping to conditions that protect them from heat and intense sun. Their existence expands. A glacier can be not only a moving mass of ice, but a living surface with its own small ecosystem. Coastal glaciers receive nutrients from nearby land and ocean air, and that can support the algae the forms rely on. Ice forms are a reminder that life can specialize into places that seem unlivable using tiny opportunities created by melt light and seasonal change. Polar bear fur looks white, but is actually transparent and hollow. The fur appears white because it scatters light, not because it contains white pigment. Each hair can transmit and diffuse light in a way that blends into snow and ice background, helping the animal disappear in plain sight. A hollow structure also relates to insulation because trapped air slows heat loss, especially when paired with the dense underfur and thick, fat layer beneath the skin. This design helps polar bears remain warm in environments where exposed surfaces bleed heat quickly. The camouflage effect is not perfect in every situation, but in the pale polar landscape, it can be enough to soften the bear's outline, especially at a distance. What makes this detail captivating is that it shows how survival in icy places often depends on subtle physics rather than obvious armor. A polar bear's coat is not simply thick, it is engineered to manage light and heat at the same time using the structure of each hair as part of a larger cold weather system. Snow on Mars can be carbon dioxide, not water. Ice on Mars winter can bring a kind of snowfall that would vanish on your tongue without becoming water. In the planet's intense cold, carbon dioxide can freeze out of the air and settle onto the ground as frost. And snow can build seasonal caps near the poles that grow and shrink as some. Mike returns. This means the atmosphere itself is being temporarily stored on the surface, then released again, like breathing in slow motion. In some regions, this seasonal ice can shape the ground by triggering small flows and slides as it warms and turns back into gas. The result is a landscape where winter is not only colder, it is chemically different, made from a gas that is part of the air you would be standing in. Mars shows that snow is not a single substance, it is a climate signature, and on that world the signature is written in frozen carbon dioxide. Jupiter's moon, Europa, likely hides an ocean beneath an icy crust. Europa looks like a bright cracked shell, and those long dark lines hint at stress motion and a hidden interior, but is not fully frozen. Many scientists think a global ocean of liquid water may lie beneath the ice kept from freezing solid by internal heating and constant flexing from Jupiter's gravity. The surface is scored with ridges and bands that look like the crust is shifted and refrozen again and again. That makes Europa feel less like a dead ice ball and more like a sealed world with activity below. If an ocean exists there, it would be one of the most intriguing places to ask whether life could exist without sunlight, relying on chemistry and energy from within. The distance is enormous, yet the ingredients feel familiar: water, ice, salt, and time. Europa turns the idea of an ocean inside out, placing it under a lid so thick that the sea becomes invisible, but not necessarily absent. Enceladus sprays icy plumes that contain salts from a hidden sea, and Solidus is small, yet it behaves like a world with a heartbeat near its south pole. Cracks in the ice vent material outward into space as towering plumes. Spacecraft measurements have found water vapor, ice grains, and signs of salts within that spray, suggesting the source is not just surface frost. It likely connects to liquid water below, meaning the moon may have a subsurface sea feeding these jets. The plumes are extraordinary because they let scientists sample an interior ocean without drilling through ice. The moon is in a sense handing out pieces of its hidden world. The vents also imply energy pressure and plumbing, a system capable of moving water from deep inside to the vacuum of space. Enceladus turns ice into a doorway. It shows that even far from the sun, a frozen surface can conceal liquid water and then reveal it atom by atom as a shimmering fountain. Titan can have methane rain and methane snow in its cold climate. Titan is so cold that water ice behaves like rock, while methane can play the role water plays on Earth. In its thick atmosphere, methane can condense into clouds, fall as rain, and collect in lakes and seas. It can also freeze and fall as snow or sleet in the coldest conditions. That means Titan may have weather that feels familiar in pattern but alien in substance with shorelines, drainage channels, and storms built from hydrocarbons instead of water. The surface is shaped by a cycle of evaporation, condensation, and precipitation, but the liquid involved would be dangerously cold to us Titans. Hazy sky hides much of this from ordinary view, yet radar and spacecraft observations have revealed smooth lake surfaces and river-like features. It is a reminder that a planet or moon does not need Earth temperatures to have active weather. Titan shows how the same physical rules can build a whole climate out of a different liquid, turning methane into rain, snow, and sea. Pluto has slow-moving nitrogen glaciers despite its distant sunlight. Pluto sits in dim, distant light, yet it still hosts moving ice landscapes in the cold. Their nitrogen can freeze into a solid that is soft enough to flow slowly across the surface, forming glacial-like shapes. Some regions show broad, smooth plains with patterns that suggest the material is moving, overturning, and renewing itself over time. The idea is striking because nitrogen on Earth is a gas. You breathe, not a substance you imagine creeping like ice on. Pluto, it can become ground. It can pool in basins, collect in layers, and drift downhill under gravity, even with weak sunlight. Subtle heating and long seasons can drive change, especially when volatile ices shift between solid and gas. Pluto shows the glaciers are not only made of water, they are a behavior, a slow flow of frozen material. And in the outer solar system, the material can be nitrogen, moving in silence across a world. Once thought static ice can preserve footprints for years when compacted into hard firn. When snow is repeatedly compressed by wind, weight, and time, it can become firn dense enough to resist quick change, but still not fully glacial ice. A footprint pressed into this surface can linger far longer than you would expect because the cold slows melting and the firm texture holds shape. In some places, tracks become fossil-like impressions, surviving storms and sunlight until a deeper transformation erases them. The persistence depends on conditions: steady cold, limited new snowfall, and a surface that hardens instead of softening. What makes this fascinating is the contrast between scale and trace. Huge ice sheets move and reshape land, yet they can also hold the small record of a single step. Firm sips in the middle of snow and ice, and that in-between state can be protective. A footprint becomes a message to the future, not because someone preserved it carefully, but because the surface itself was in the right stage of transformation to keep it. Glacier ice can preserve volcanic ash layers as precise time markers. When a major volcano erupts, fine ash can rise high into the atmosphere and travel far from its source. Some of that ash eventually settles onto snowfields and ice sheets, forming a thin, dark layer that can be buried by later snowfall. Over time, the layer becomes locked inside the ice as a distinct horizon, a line that can be traced and compared across regions. These horizons act like timestamps because many eruptions are independently dated by other methods, letting scientists align ice layers with known events. The ash also carries a chemical fingerprint that can identify which volcano produced it, turning a thin band into a global clue. This is one of the ways ice becomes readable, not only by its own texture, but by the foreign material it traps. A glacier does not just dull winter, it stores interruptions. Moments when the sky filled with ash and the falling particles quietly became part of the frozen record marking time, with a dusting of distant fire ice cores, reveal abrupt climate shifts that happened within decades. It is tempting to imagine climate changing only slowly, like a long, smooth fade. Ice core records challenge that comfort. In some periods, The layered signals show sharp transitions that unfold within the span of a human lifetime, not over endless ages. The evidence appears as rapid changes in indicators preserved in the ice, suggesting shifts in temperature and atmospheric conditions that happen quickly once a threshold was crossed. These abrupt swings are a reminder that Earth systems can reorganize, not only drift. Oceans, sea ice, and winds are linked, and when the links change, the result can be sudden. The fascination here is not only speed, it is sensitivity. A stable pattern can persist, then give way to a new one that lasts for centuries. Ice cores make these transitions visible because they preserve year after year of detail, like a timeline with fine resolution. They show that the past was not always gradual. Sometimes it turned a corner, quickly leaving a sharp signature in frozen layers. Sea ice melt compression surface waters, changing local ocean mixing. When sea ice melts, it releases fresh water onto the ocean surface, creating a lighter layer that can sit above denser, saltier water. That layering can act like a lid, reducing vertical mixing that would normally bring nutrients upward and carry heat downward. The result can change how the upper ocean warms, how plankton blooms develop, and how currents behave locally. In some places, a thin, fresh layer can help the surface freeze again later by limiting the upward flow of warmer water from below. In other places, it can trap heat near the surface, depending on winds and sunlight. The key is that melting does not simply remove ice, it changes the structure of the water column. The ocean becomes more stratified, and that can ripple through ecosystems and weather interactions. Sea ice is often pictured as a surface feature, but its melt reshapes the ocean beneath, altering how the sea breathes, stirs, and distributes energy. In the cold seasons that follow, snow avalanches can travel on cushions of air, increasing their speed. A fast avalanche can behave less like a simple slide and more like a moving cloud with snow particles suspended in turbulent flow. As the mass accelerates, it can trap and churn air, reducing friction with the surface and allowing the front to surge forward with frightening speed. Some avalanches generate a powder cloud that outruns the denser core, spilling over terrain and carrying force beyond the main flow. This is why avalanches can cross flats, climb small rises, or slam into structures with a blast-like impact even when the slope angle seems modest. The motion is powered by gravity, but the behavior is shaped by fluid dynamics, snow and air, acting together as a single moving system. The sound can be a deep roar that grows rapidly, and the foe itself can be destructive, knocking trees and pushing debris ahead of the snow. An avalanche is not only snow falling, it is a fast, unstable mixture that can ride on its own turbulence, turning a slope into a sudden traveling force. Snow bridges can form over crevices strong until warmth weakens them. Wind and fresh snowfall can drift across an opening and stitch a roof that looks smooth, continuous, and safe. Underneath, the void remains sometimes deep enough to swallow. Sound bridge holds when its layers are cold bonded and thick enough to spread weight outward. It fails when the structure thins, when sunlight softens the grains, or when repeated loading fractures the hidden span. What makes these bridges so deceptive is their ordinary appearance. They can look identical to solid ground, especially after a storm erases surface texture on glaciers. Travelers probe ahead and move roped because the surface alone cannot be trusted. A bridge is not a crack. You can see it is a quiet disguise built by weather, and it can turn a bright, gentle slope into a place where a single step tests on unseen structure. A cornice is wind built over hanging snow, often fragile from below. Strong winds carry loose snow over ridges and deposit it on the sheltered side, building outward into empty air. From above, the shape can look like a natural extension of the ridge, smooth and solid from below. It is a suspended mass with a hollow underside layered by storm after storm. Cornices grow slowly and fail suddenly, especially when temperatures rise or new snow adds weight. A small collapse can trigger much larger releases downslope because the falling block strikes with concentrated force. The danger is made worse by how far back a cornice can extend from the visible edge. What looks like safe ground may already be unsupported. Cornices are sculptures made by wind, but they are also traps shaped by balance and gravity waiting quietly until conditions shift enough for the overhang to give way. Snow can form in deserts, proving cold is not just latitude. Some deserts sit at high elevations, where thin air loses heat rapidly after sunset, allowing temperatures to plunge even under clear skies. Others lie in the path of winter storms that briefly carry moisture across cold ground. When snow falls there, it reveals how quickly extremes can alternate with sunlit warmth, replaced by overnight freezing. The snow often melts fast, but not before soaking into soil and briefly feeding dormant plants. Patterns emerge quickly as some light clears exposed slopes, while shaded pockets remain white. The scene feels unreal because it contradicts expectation, not physics. Deserts are defined by dryness, not constant heat. Snow arrives as a reminder that cold and arid conditions can coexist, sometimes quietly, sometimes dramatically, in places shaped by elevation, airflow, and timing rather than latitude. Alone ice can creep around obstacles, leaving them embedded for centuries under constant pressure. Ice does not stop when it meets resistance. It deforms and flows, pressing against rock, squeezing into gaps, and slowly wrapping around anything in its path. Stones that fall onto a glacier can be buried, sealed in place, and carried within the ice for decades or longer. Some eventually reappear at the surface as surrounding ice melts away, while others remain hidden, traveling with the glacier's internal layers. This movement leaves distortions inside the ice that record each encounter. It also explains how glaciers move through uneven terrain without shattering. Ice behaves like a solid that yields when given time. Obstacles become temporary anchors, shaping flow without halting it. The glacier learns their form, absorbs them into its structure, and continues onward, carrying pieces of the landscape inside itself. Glaciers can calve with explosions louder than thunder, releasing icebergs. At the edge where a glacier meets the sea, cracks widen as the ice is pulled forward and undercut by water. Eventually, a towering section breaks free and collapses, striking the ocean with enormous force. The impact sends waves outward and launches spray into the air, while a deep boom echoes across the water. Newly released icebergs can roll as they detach, exposing dense blue ice that has beyond sealed away from light for ages. The glacier front changes, instantly reshaped by a single release of stored stress. Calving is not gentle breaking, it is a sudden conversion of tension into motion and sound. Watching it happen makes a glacier feel active, not because it chooses to move, but because gravity and fracture have finally reached agreement. Sea ice contracts sediments, transporting them far across oceans. In shallow coastal waters, fine material is stirred from the seafloor by waves and currents. As ice forms, it can capture that sediment or even freeze onto the bottom and lift particles into the growing sheet. Wind and currents then carry the ice away from shore, drifting for months while holding its cargo. When melting finally releases the sediment, it settles in places far removed from its origin. Its process can cloud distant waters, seed the seabed with new material, and leave thin layers that later become part of the geological record. The ice itself often shows streaks of gray and brown marking its journey. Sea ice is not just frozen water. It can act as a slow transport system, quietly relocating pieces of coast and seafloor across open ocean. Snow crystals can form perfectly flat plates, thinner than a human hair, under specific temperature and humidity conditions. Growth favors wide, delicate surfaces instead of branching arms. The crystal spreads outward like a tiny sheet, forming sharp edges and subtle internal lines that trace its expansion. These plates come flutter as they fall, briefly catching light before vanishing against the background. Their fragility, striking a warm breath or gentle touch, can erase them instantly, yet the atmosphere produces them repeatedly whenever conditions align. Plate-shaped crystals also influence how snow behaves once it lands, stacking and drifting differently than feathery or needle-like forms. The shape is not decorative, It is the most efficient response to that slice of sky. Each flat plate is a quiet record of vapor, choosing where attachment was easiest, turning invisible conditions into precise frozen geometry. Ice can crackle as it warms, releasing trapped air and stress. As temperatures shift, ice expands and contracts, building tension across its surface. Tiny fractures open and close, producing sharp ticks and faint snapping sounds that travel efficiently through the frozen layer. In clear lake ice, long cracks can race outward, creating singing tones that echo across the surface. Trapped bubbles and pockets adjust as stress redistributes, adding sudden pops that feel almost conversational. These sounds do not require the ice to break apart. They come from internal adjustment from frozen material, finding small releases of pressure. Warming ice can sound alive even when it looks unchanged. The noise is evidence of motion at a microscopic level. Frozen surfaces are not static. They are constantly responding to sunlight, air temperature, and load, letting go of strain in brief, audible moments. Glacial polish can make bedrock shine, created by ice dragging grit. As glaciers move, they carry sand, pebbles, and crushed fragments at their base, pressed into bedrock under immense weight. This grit grinds and smooths the surface, turning rough stone glossy. In some places, the rock reflects light, like it has been carefully worked. Alongside the shine, narrow scratches often appear, pointing in the direction the ice once traveled. These markings turn bare stone into a record of motion. Long after the ice has vanished, you can still read its passage underfoot. This is not erosion by flowing water. It is abrasion by a moving solid using trapped debris as a tool. Glacial polish shows how ice can leave delicate, readable signatures, not only through massive valleys, but through the smoothness and direction written into exposed rock. The cryosphere links ocean's atmosphere and land through frozen waters, constant motion. Snow changes how sunlight is reflected on land. Sea ice alters how oceans exchange heat with air, and glaciers move water from mountains toward coasts over long timescales. These frozen forms are connected by continuous transitions, freezing, melting, drifting, compacting, and refreezing. When sea ice expands, winds and waves respond. When snowpack shrinks, rivers and soils feel the change. Months later, when glaciers deliver ice to the sea, coastlines and currents adjust. Frozen water is not scenery. It is infrastructure for moving energy and fresh water around the planet. The cryosphere can be thin as frost or thick as an ice sheet, yet both participate in the same system. Seeing it as a network changes how winter feels. Cold becomes motion, connection, and exchange, linking air, land, and sea through slow, persistent change. Here we are at the quiet edge of our journey tonight. We drifted through a world shaped by cold, where snow remembers the sky it fell through, and ice carries stories far longer than any winter night. We traced frozen rivers across continents and oceans, watched invisible air turn into crystal, and followed slow-moving ice as it carved valleys, carried stones, and sealed moments in place. We saw how frozen water can whisper, crackle, glow, and flow, sometimes gently, sometimes with immense force, always in motion, even when it appears still. Ice and snow are not pauses in the world, they are part of its circulation. They move heat, store time, soften sound, and reshape land with patience rather than urgency. From distant moons to quiet mountain valleys, the same rules repeat in different forms, reminding us that even the coldest places are active, connected, and alive in their own way. And now, as those thoughts begin to settle, there is nothing left to hold on to. Like your breathing slow, let your shoulders drop, let the images fade into a soft, distant hush like snowfall at night. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, you are always welcome to like, subscribe, or share a quiet thought below. It helps others find their way here, to one sleepy soul at a time. And if you happen to still be awake, another calm exploration will be waiting for you on the screen, ready whenever curiosity stirs again. But for now, there is nowhere else to go. Allow your body to rest, and your mind to loosen its grip. The cold world can keep moving without you for a while. Sleep well and good night.